Whoa, we're live right now. Welcome to another episode of The Jeff Show. I'm so happy that my friend, my internet friend, Jason Horton, as he's known, has decided to join me again to talk more TV. Today we're talking about Vikings. This is a show I'm very hard pressed to find people that have really stuck with Vikings from the beginning to the end. For some people, it's an adjacent to Game of Thrones. That's how I felt about it. Like, when Game of Thrones would get frustrating, I'd always turn to Vikings and always never be disappointed, mostly never disappointed. And I got to tell you, where Game of Thrones fails miserably, Vikings, I think, really succeeds in many ways, but I have many reservations. I guess let's just launch right into it. I just want to tell you, I'm going to say what my thoughts are.
Mhm.
You tell me your thoughts, and then we're going to start talking about it. So I just finished season 6, the second half. The thing about Vikings is they're really 2 seasons per season. It's 10 episodes per half. It's 20 episodes per season. These are giant seasons.
I was trying to remember. Did they do that from season 1? Was that all the way
No,
through? Okay, I
no,
didn't think it was shorter seasons initially, right?
it started in season 5 after, again, this is spoilers. If you've not seen Vikings, turn this off right now. If you've watched the whole show, because I'm not gonna tiptoe around on eggshells.
Right, we're gonna jump right into it.
Right. Ragnar dies in season 4, and you're just like, oh, that's the end of the show. And then Vikings is like, no, actually, we're going to talk about Ragnar's kids, who I guess are like always. I don't know anything about the history. I was watching this blind. I don't know how anything turns out from the original sagas. So I wasn't aware that Ivar the Boneless was this huge part of Viking history. So the show rejuvenates itself, and not only does it rejuvenate itself, it doubles down by turning these 10 episode seasons into 20 episode seasons. So the last 4 seasons are really 8 seasons in a weird kind of way. It's really insane.
Yeah, no, I really liked the latter half of the show. I mean, I liked the show all the way through. It's really odd in the history of television because there's a lot of long running shows that have got into those latter seasons, and most of the main characters that started it out are gone, and the show is like a shadow of its former self. It's not very
Burnt
good.
out shell.
Yeah, and when Ragnar first died at 4, I was like, that's exactly where this is going. It's just gonna kind of go downhill. Nobody had
Yep.
the charisma of Travis Fimmel. I was like, it's just not gonna work.
Yep.
But I was like, I'll check out a few, and I did, and it proved me wrong. It got really good. I mean, it was good before, but it maintained its quality level.
I think I think that was predicated too on hinging the brothers against each other. It's like they took the rift between Rollo and Ragnar and then again doubled down on it and like
Right.
made it even more intense with these brothers having different mothers and different allegiances and
Yeah, different goals. Yeah, for
right.
sure. It basically took it from a, one-on-one conflict to like a three-person conflict, right? There were 3
Yeah.
brothers, right? Yeah.
4.
4.
4.
Wait.
There
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
but what they did and this was so brilliant right off the bat after the 4 brothers are victorious in avenging their father's death, they finish the whole season. I think that must have been season 5.
Yeah, I think so.
They finish the season with Ivar killing his brother in front of all these people. And that just sets the precedent for the rest of the show where you're like, oh my, because you think these brothers could never turn on each other. They're brothers. It's like, no, like,
Yeah.
just crazy, really, really crazy stuff. So that one brother, he's like a footnote. He was fodder. He was he was a sacrifice to
Right.
the television gods
He
for
was
us to.
he was a red shirt for sure.
Oh yeah, he was a
Yeah.
red shirt. And the show just kept. I mean, listen, it was just slowly building towards this huge thing with Ivar. And here's where the show kind of, if we could talk about the things that didn't work, or at least the things that were almost stretched a little thin. They get to this point where they defeat Ivar. Ivar is the baddest of the bad. And then this guy who is, he's disabled. He's a paraplegic, not paraplegic. He's disabled. He's got he can't walk, right? He can't walk, and yet he finds his way out of the Viking village. He finds his way onto the Silk Road. He's able to get really, really far and sort of rebuild his forces, which I thought was a little kind of like, I don't know. That was the first time where I was like, come on.
Yeah, my major nitpicky thing about Ivar, and it's a nitpick. I just went with it, but they weren't really consistent in how his disability affected him.
Right.
In the first couple seasons that he was in, it was like it was an ordeal for him to get across the room. But by the time you get to season 6, he has those little mechanical.
He's walking,
and he's basically walking like with a limp. But I dramatic license. I understand. They needed that character to be involved in these things, so they took a little license with it, and I don't hold that against it too much. I mean, it was one of those things I kind of noticed. I was like, and then I got over it.
It's I agree. It's dramatic license, and yes, I kind of was like when he got the metal braces, I kind of rolled my eyes like crazy. Like the chariot, I thought worked for the show because Floki builds boats. Why couldn't he build a chariot? And obviously, Ivar, it's like he's a Caesar of some kind in his chariot. That worked for me.
Totally worked.
What I needed to do for myself, the mental gymnastics that I had to do for myself in order to really sort of pardon this flaw in the show, was just really attribute it to Ivar's will. Because that's something that was always in the character. He had such a strong will. And you know what? They really serviced the story arc with this detail because, did I lose you? Oh no, there you are.
No, I was just moving.
They really serviced the story arc with this detail because for all the seasons, Ivar is just trying so desperately to walk. He wants everybody to treat him like everybody else. He doesn't want to be treated like someone who's disabled. He wants to be treated like every other Viking, and takes himself super seriously because of his flaws, blah, 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 blah. And that will is so iron that he literally wills himself to stand like other men in a limited capacity. And yes, they take some license, but I thought it kind of worked for the character. So,
you know what? I really like that point. The only thing I think that would have, and hindsight's always 2020, but I'm sure the creators are looking at that now and say, oh damn, we could have laid the groundwork in 5 or 6 minutes spread out across 4 other episodes that would have at least made that leap easier to buy. If we would have seen a little more of that struggle trying to be normal,
like practicing his walks and stuff. And
exactly.
Like being suspended from a rope and having the iron legs on and like slowly building different muscles in his whatever. It would have made it better.
Yeah, for me, it's a little thing. In a macro sense, that's something that as a younger man that would have bugged the shit out of me. Like I might have.
Yeah, me too.
But I find as I get older, I really do. I can let stuff like that go easier when it doesn't work. Like if a show, regardless of the show, if it's engaging with me emotionally, the logic, the external logic, I don't care anymore.
Yeah. I find I agree with that, and I find myself in a similar boat. And I'll say this: what was interesting, what turned into what could have been a jump the shark moment of Ivar's defeated, he's on the Silk Road. How is he going to build back his forces from zero? He was the most powerful, man in Vikingdom, and then, has to rebuild himself. But what I found interesting is in the very last couple episodes, Ivar starts, first of all, they actually I don't want to call it, he was never redeemable. He did atrocities that were just so bad and horrible. But in the very last few episodes, they really sort of brought out some humanity in Ivar a little bit. And I really again, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect writing. It wasn't flawless, as you said, nitpicks. But I thought what they were trying to sort of do was really, I thought it really, really worked. And particularly when he comes back to Kattegat and they're like, you once said you were a god. And he responds by standing up. I think he takes one step or something. No, he pushes his crutch away and he falls flat on his face in front of everybody. And you want to know something? You could say, oh, that's Ivar being tricky and cunning. I don't think so. I think that was Ivar. He says it at one point. He says, the throne poisons your mind. Yeah. It makes you think you're a god. And I really believe that is what happened to Ivar. And he just sort of, he humbles himself in this moment in front of everybody where everybody laughs at him and he laughs with everybody. And it's like in the way, what's interesting, and we'll get to this in a little bit, it actually completes his character arc, if you can believe it or not. Yeah, I think so. But I'll explain. I'll let you. If I don't know if you have anything you want to add about that before we move on.
No, not really. I mean, I agree with you. We can go to the next deal.
So what's interesting about that is I think that completes Ivar's arc. He gets back into Kattegat. All he wanted to do was go home. And then the writers find a way to sort of use this as a catapult or a springboard to basically close this long overarching theme that's been there for the whole series, which is Ivar comes back and they talk. He's suddenly with fine hair again and his brother. And it's like, it's amazing how many times alliances shifted between these guys. And now here they are sitting peacefully. And you're kind of wondering, when's the other shoe going to drop? And they even talk, it's like they turn to the fourth wall and we're like, guys, this is all we know. We're gonna start fighting again.
Freeze frame.
Yeah, freeze frame like that. It's so on the nose, ham-fisted. But what it does is it allows him to end after his arc is complete, because what Ivar does is Ivar goes, this is boring. I hate this boring existence. I want to be the greatest Viking who ever lived. This is what I was always doing. What ends up happening is they become soldiers without a war. Mm-hmm. And soldiers without a war have no meaning. So they literally launch a campaign to go back to England for no reason.
No good reason.
No reason at all. And they just they gather, and fine hair is all about it. And what I think these guys were doing they were kind of going on a suicide mission. They knew they were, on some level they had to know.
Yeah, I think they were totally raging against the dying of the light. The whole last season felt like that to me.
Yeah. And he, I think they want to succeed in their goal of conquering Wessex. Yeah. But I think deep down inside, it's like they're doing it against their own will of like, I can't stand this restlessness inside of me. The only way I'm going to find release is death. And fine hair gets it first, right?
Yeah.
He's walking alone in the woods. He gets it and he sees his brother. I thought that was a very touching way to complete his arc. Mm-hmm. And then the final one is Ivar. Ivar dies on the battlefield. He chooses, they do a parlay, and it's just like, what for? Like literally what for? Like there is no, the writers, they're writing towards a goal that doesn't exist. Like there's no end in sight for this thing. The only end in sight is Ivar realizes how this is so futile. Like, what is he going to keep? He's never going to be satisfied. The only thing he could do is choose death. And then in his moment of death, he realizes that he's not even a Viking. He's afraid to die. Mm. That just, for me, I was like, mwah. I was like, great. I was like, that is so great. That just like sums up, here's the most fearless dude ever who sends so many people to their deaths and is always, raging for war. And here he is finally dying. That he
going to Valhalla.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then suddenly he doesn't believe.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe and he's afraid. And he loses his faith. And it's so funny how he's a complete parallel to the opposite of his brother, Bjorn. Who literally is dying of an infection from the last season.
Right.
And I'm just kind of like,
running theme in the finales of the show too, right?
Yeah.
Like, was that when Ragnar, didn't he split a season where he was in France and he was injured and dying, and then they come back to it the next season. And he's
Which
still
is why I'm rolling my eyes because I'm just
yeah,
I'm like, come on, is he going to survive that sword in the gut? Like he's done. He's
yeah,
just
yeah,
it's done. And I thought, and here he is dying of sickness in his bed, the way that Ivar might want to die, at peace, not at peace, but in his bed,
right.
right?
Nope.
And for Bjorn, that he can't have that because he is a true Viking. So he's like, put me on my horse one last time. And he basically goes out there and scares the shit out of the Russes
Yeah, that was a great scene.
Oh, it was just that had me jumping up out of my chair, like hand in the air, like shouting for Bjorn. I thought it was such a great. I think he had the best death out of everybody, like by far.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I was really affected by Ragnar's, but in a much different way. But
I was very upset. I really rolled my eyes at Ragnar's death because it's like literally, I felt like he just chose once again. He also, I guess, actually, no, that works with what I was saying.
yeah,
I didn't even realize it. He
yeah,
chose death because he knew, like, it's like he comes back to Kattegat for what? It's this endless cycle of doing what we think the gods want us to do.
yeah.
We think we're always, these guys for all these seasons, they're always talking about what is the will of the gods. Like, what is the will of the gods for us? They interpret their will as God's will and use it to launch war, which is such a human thing to do. But every time they get to this place where they're never content, their thirst is never satiated. They have a god-like thirst in a way, that can never be satiated with human conquest.
Right. It's funny as you say that. I think that brings up a really it's paralleled to the show. I mean, I honestly believe that the show is like a Viking. Like hear me out. Like the show is basic, like it's id. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to make it doesn't necessarily always make 100% logic sense.
Yes.
There's logic leaps, there's plot holes, there's this and that, but you kind of go with it because it's just fulfilling like an emotional need.
Right.
What
Right. I dig that.
like the show is moving forward almost like they do. Like I'm gonna go to France and attack these people, which really has no purpose or meaning or reason to do it. Plot mechanic wise, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna go do it because it's what I want to do. And I think to me the show kind of feels like that. Has a
And
whole
I think you're right. And what's interesting too is you have this sort of like, and then you get to the point where it becomes these characters, they just reach this point where they literally can't, they physically push they push the envelope so far that the only thing to do is to die. Like you just can't sustain it. And the other thing too about season 6, there are many sort of like logic and plot holes throughout the whole both halves of the season, but mainly that second half. Like for instance, Ivar's talking about betraying Finehair. He never really does, right?
not that I can think of. I mean, and
He
I'm
says
trying to was he talking from a previous season? So
no.
I'm still a little murky on like season 5.
When he came back to Kattegat and Finehair forgave him,
Mhm.
and they went to go raid Wessex again because that's what Vikings do. He's talking to his brother, whose name I'm going to butcher right now.
Yeah.
Hetzik.
Actually, that sounded right. That almost
Hetzik.
sounded right, yeah. I'm
Hetzik.
not gonna try it.
Hetzik. He's talking to him, and he's like, "I have a feeling that Finehair is going to die. He's not coming back."
Mm.
And they kind of, who they kind of sort of they turned Eric the Red went from being this really sort of awesome like sidekick character, and they just turned him into such a snake. Like
Yeah.
he became such a snake, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, because it had been a good bit of time between season 5 and season 6, and I
Yeah, for me
waited
too.
until it dropped on Amazon before I binged the last of season 6, so I had honestly forgot a lot of the stuff with Eric. Like, I had to go back and rewatch some of it. Yeah, it did almost feel like a different character.
He turned on a dime, like they just turned him on a dime, which I was okay with. I guess they needed to create additional conflict, but I also felt like that whole thing didn't really amount to very much, you know. And then it turns out she is a witch and she makes him blind, and it's like, wait, so this show is not based in the supernatural at all. Like,
Right. Well, they had bits and pieces of it, all the way from season one. But but even in season one, they did kind of a similar thing to how Game of Thrones approached their supernatural elements. Where, like in Game of Thrones season one, there was hardly a touch of
right,
magical or mysticism. I was at the end of season one where you first saw the dragon eggs, I think.
right.
So like I think it was like towards the end of season two or whatever, where you actually first saw a dragon. Then it little by little it got more mystical.
They eased us in. We were the frog in the boiling water.
Yeah. And I think Vikings did a similar thing over the first couple seasons, but then it felt like they kind of dropped that whole supernatural element for a little
I don't
while.
think they. No, you know what that
like
was?
Ragnar used to talk to the witch all the time in those early seasons.
Wait, when you say the witch, do you mean the seer?
The seer, yes. Yeah, and
So
there was definitely like like it didn't show like magic, but there was definitely a mysticism to it.
right, there was for sure there was a mysticism, and I think that the seer was a wonderful element because it really spoke to what these guys like believed in and stuff. However, I always interpreted those visions and everything to be so like pure imagination. Because at the end of the day, I think if any of it was real, we would see. And you know what? The one thing I wish they had done, and I was waiting for that end scene, I was like, please tell me that they're going to go up to Valhalla and we're going to actually seeing them sup with the gods or sup at the, like, just around a feast, like some sort of feast. I thought that would have been such a cool touch.
I don't know. Like I always got the feeling like thematically in the show, like from the creator's standpoint, that
it doesn't exist.
That it does not exist.
Well,
that it's all for naught. Like I always kind of.
Well, that is the theme of the show. No, that literally
exactly.
Is the theme of the show. Yeah. Like,
so I think if you did do that, it would go against that, like the thematic purpose.
It would.
It might be a neat moment, but
it would have been such a fun. That would have been a fun moment. But you are right.
Isn't that pretty much how they ended True Blood? And it kind of sucked.
Yes, that is how they ended. Well, True Blood started sucking in season 3, man.
No,
like,
it didn't suck because of the ending. The ending was just another straw on the camel's back.
Godric was the best part of that whole show. He was probably my favorite character, and they just did not use him properly. He was great. Yeah. But yes, no, you're absolutely right. It does. That is what the truth is, that none of this stuff exists, that there is no Valhalla, that these guys really are dying for no reason. And this is all really cemented with Floki. Mm-hmm. Floki gets to this point it happens in Iceland. He's going to find, he goes to find a new land where he can be basically he's a pilgrim. Yeah. He wants religious freedom to just sort of do something that's away from the warning and all that BS and just worship the gods and yada, yada, yada. And because of human nature, they can't break out of that. They just, there's all that stuff happens. Flatnose is a great character, by the way, just a bone chilling character who really just is great. And basically what happens is Floki becomes disillusioned and he disappears and he goes into the cave. And then all of a sudden there's this jump. We never know how he gets out of the cave. We only know that he finds a crucifix, and they're like, we're not going to explore that any further.
Right.
And then you don't see Floki until the last episode. And by this point, Floki is, first of all, I think he's experiencing some form of Alzheimer's or dementia or something. He's starting to forget things.
Yeah.
But he also is completely stripped of his beliefs. He says like some of the best lines written in the whole show. He talks about simply realizing that he's nothing but an ant looking for shade underneath a leaf and can only see the leaf above him and doesn't know anything about anything. Because Floki, the entire show, is always knows what the gods want, always looking for what the gods want. So sure of things. And then all of a sudden, Floki goes, I don't know anything. He has nothing. He has no opinion on it. It's such a beautiful transformation. And it's the ultimate answer to the thesis of the show, in that, as what you're saying, Valhalla doesn't really exist. All these people are doing this for nothing. Yeah. Still, I want that scene. I want to see them supping at Valhalla.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
The heart wants. I thought even in the sense of like, it would have been nice. Like maybe, when you would have done, if I ran the zoo, this is when I would have done that scene. Okay. Actually, I figured out the perfect place to put this scene where it still makes sense thematically with what you were proposing and saying. Ready?
Okay.
As Ivar is dying, and he says, I'm so afraid. And then as he shuffles loose the mortal coil, we suddenly go to some sort of fever dream of what he is hoping is going to be waiting for him in Valhalla. And it's not really there.
Yeah. Okay. I could have lived with that.
Maybe if I had to have my druthers, if you had to insert it somewhere, that's where you would do it.
Yeah, good.
The flip side, and I was kind of wondering, at first I was kind of like, what a bullshit ending, dead end for Hetzik to stay in England and convert to Christianity. But then I realized what the deeper meaning was behind it. Hetzik realizes that there is no Valhalla when he sees his brother die. He sees the fiercest Viking die afraid, and he promises not to tell anyone. And he realizes that there is no Valhalla and converts to Christianity because he wants to go to heaven.
Okay.
That's what that's my theory on that.
Yeah. No, I could see that. I mean, watching it, I didn't think that much into it. I was just, to me, it just seemed like a kind of a shoehorned bookend.
Yeah. Shoehorned.
To what's the character name? Athelstan.
Oh, yeah.
That's what.
No, Alfred.
The priest, wasn't his name Athelstan?
Yeah, well, Athelstan is the real father of.
Yeah, that's who I meant.
Of Alfred, and he gets named Athelstan. That's his new name.
Oh, okay. No, but I'm talking the guy from the first season that they brought and was the slave.
Yeah, he's killed by. Yes, but he's killed. Yes, but he's killed by Floki.
Yeah, no, I was saying that this just felt like an answer to that. Like, like basically in the moment, like I said, I wasn't thinking about it that deeply. I just thought it was a way to honor that character. Like,
you know what I think? I think that Alfred figured out that Athelstan was really his father, and this was a way of honoring him.
Could be.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So, and it's hard. So, and then we've just spent the first, 30 minutes, talking about, the last half in season 6, but, it's really hard to talk about Vikings without talking about Travis Fimmel, the first 4 seasons in Ragnar. Cause we've just sat here and talked about how much we loved how it ended up and it was cool. And, we appreciate the transition from, all the lead characters in the first 4 to these new characters.
Right.
But all of that said, and how much I like those characters, there was never another actor on that entire show and the entire run of that show that had that charisma and that he was just awesome. The freaking choices that guy makes,
he's phenomenal.
Just standing there, he'd just be standing there, and he's like this, I don't. It sounds derogatory, but he's almost like an animal, like a predator. Like he's always kind of swaying. He's always looking.
Yeah. Yep.
And his eyes, I was just like, he's made some questionable career choices afterwards, but I'll watch anything that dude's in because he's magnetic.
He's in Raised by Wolves. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have, and I loved it. And he brings a similar energy to that. Yeah.
Can we talk? Let's finish about Vikings. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Just a little bit about that. I was so pleased to see him in that show, and I think he's great in that show as well. To speak to everything you just said, I think it all ties into this idea that I would imagine that those choices come from this idea that Ragnar he's pure Viking, like in the sense of like he believes so greatly in the concept of Valhalla that in those early seasons, those Vikings, well, they always were not afraid of dying, but you really felt it in they just didn't care about death. They did not For them, death
They
was a
embraced
victory.
they were looking forward to it. They embraced it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying in the way of like, I think the other thing that makes the show so interesting and what makes Ragnar so like magnetic to watch is this idea that like if you are because this is kind of like an overarching theme for the whole show is what happens after you die, or it makes you think about what happens after you die. And these guys are just like they're just so radicalized in their belief that they can literally accomplish anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they never, even in instances of defeat, they're not really defeated because they swing for the fences. And the reason why they swing for the fences is because they're not worried about life. They're not worried about if they lose their life, and it allows them to take risks that maybe others would not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that.
And that's why they're so successful by their stupidity of like, possibly, getting such bodily harm,
Yeah. And what I was talking about earlier about the, the whole show feeling like basic id, like I feel like Ragnar was the personification of that. He was like the perfect personification of that. I mean, he went where the wind took him.
Right. Completely.
Yeah.
Not satisfied. And because he went where the wind took him, he always ascended to the next level, not even really wanting to.
Yeah.
Like he never cared about being the king. He never cared about, there's so many things that Ragnar did not care about. The only thing that he cared about was just accomplishing whatever the goal was to its fullest in that moment. And it's also a kind of interesting like way to live your life in the sense of like, if you just friggin' and that's how people in the arts and entertainment get successful in many ways. They make like they're willing to face with no fear that sort of stuff and just drill through until doesn't matter how many times they give up, they fail or not fail, but don't get their goal.
Yeah, no, you could even say fail. That's a really good point. Yeah, like independent filmmakers as Vikings, but yeah, because we're going after this goal that really is like okay, let me walk this back a little bit. You're going after, a lot of people are going after fame and fortune, right? They're going after filmmakers. They want to be Tarantino or Spike Lee or whoever.
Right.
And that goal is much like Valhalla. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's very it's unattainable. It's unattainable for 99% of the people on the face of the earth.
Right.
That is an unattainable goal. Yet we move forward, and we year after year, day after day, month after month, we go for that goal. It almost has walking ids ourselves. I mean, that was totally me, but for my probably first 10 years of my career, totally like that. And then as I got older and start realizing, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm not saying I'm giving up on this goal, but that I realized that I already have achieved like a level of success, or what I was, and that doesn't have to be making a bunch of money or making your living on a movie. I was able to finish this movie and people were able to see it, and I'm proud.
Right.
And living in the moment. Again, I mean, it's a little wishy-washy, but I think
no, it's not.
I think a lot of Vikings comes down to, and I think one of the reasons that it so resonates with me is, it's this show that at its core is about living in the moment.
Yes. And man, I didn't think anything that you were saying is wishy-washy. And I'll tell you, I'll speak from my own personal experience. I've been a listener of Kevin Smith's Smodcast since its inception. I love Kevin Smith. I love what he's done. And he's always been, in a way, I know this sounds really weird, but he's always been kind of like a father figure to me, in the sense of like, he's always been this encouraging voice to keep doing it and yada, yada, yada. Like this encouraging voice that I don't know in real life, whatever you want to call it. And he said something one day that resonated with me so deeply. He said, if I don't if I didn't make Clerks, if I didn't make this movie, I would have died. He's like, I had to do this. Like, I just had to. It was, and it really came down to like, can I achieve this goal? Like, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if it gets seen by 1 million people or 1 people. Can I achieve this goal? And doing anything within my power to achieve it. Yeah. And that's what making my first feature length film was. And I'll tell you, I went out last March. I went out to make my second feature length film. I shot 20% of it in 3 days in a weekend. And you know what weekend that was? That was the weekend of March 8th, 2020. And you can guess the rest of that story. And then my lead actress, she got pregnant, and she had a child. I'm very happy for her. Mazel tov to her. She's awesome, awesome girl. But like, and then suddenly everything changed, and completing this film in the way that I intended it, not going to happen. But it didn't hurt the way that it would have hurt the first time, because I got to a place where I knew that I could do it and that I can do it again. And it's interesting how, if I didn't get to that goal and then I failed in March, I really think like it would have killed my soul inside. Yeah. But because I had already achieved the goal, it didn't kill my soul. Like, I was like, no, there's a way around this. I don't know what to do at the moment. I'm going to put this on the side. I'm going to focus on other things, other projects, and I'll just keep moving forward. But I never would have been able to do that if I hadn't done a feature length film prior. And I just, when you were saying all that stuff, you were just saying that's what I was thinking about, like that experience of just doing whatever it takes to reach the finishing line, and
I remember those days. I remember doing my first movie and staying up, 24 hours, and not eating, and, doing slim fast on set because I didn't want to take time to eat, which was, but I did it. And, just putting all my money and going into debt. And I mean, taking out, money on credit cards that I did not have. And I was already broke when I started it, but I was like, I'm going to finish this fucking thing. And then it comes out, my first movie, I didn't make a dime on it, for the years and years, but that, it was just, I was willing to do anything to get it done.
Yeah, but you want to know something? And I said this to you last time, and this is true. And this is really not me blowing smoke up your ass. You're in an incredible place where you're literally doing everything. First of all, you're in a place which really I wish more filmmakers would look at where you are in your place of, like, you don't need to be in LA and New York if you just want to be a filmmaker. You just need to be wherever you are and, figure out how to do things pragmatically, on modest budgets, and own all your work and create a body of work, a catalog that you own. This is my goal. Yeah. This is my ultimate goal now as a filmmaker. I don't want to be in LA. I am in New York, but not New York City. And that's not, not the same. I don't care. I really don't care. I look at someone like George Romero and I'm like, what a cool dude that he just is like, I'm just going to, and just like going to I'm going to follow the beat of my own drum and just conquer this project and this project and this project without, needing to, break down a door to get into a studio to do it. And I just think, I don't know how we got on this from Vikings, but it's a Viking spirit.
This is the last thing I'll say about it, and we'll go back to the show. But I feel like holy shit, I just totally forgot what I was going to say. Well, let's go back to Vikings.
If you remember, stop the conversation. We'll go back to it. But dude, you're right. Ragnar was magnetic to watch. He was like an animal, and yes, it was all. He just had. It was so, but here's the thing, and this is again going back to, this does relate to what we were just saying. It's just that Ragnar had goals. He was willing to risk his life and other people's lives to get to those goals, but he didn't care. But he never sought the byproducts. The byproducts were, now he's the Earl. Yeah, now he's the king. He's the this.
It was very for the moment. Everything he was doing was was like for the moment. At least for the most part.
Questions. Now, they do they throw a couple of curveballs that they never resolve, and it's true, dude. You're right. It's all id because a super ego show would totally loop back and tie up these loose ends, and this show is like, fuck that shit. I don't care. I don't care about this. We're moving forward. Firstly, being the last time we see Rollo, he actually comes to visit Lagatha and Bjorn and reveals this insane thing that's never brought up or discussed again. He's like, I might actually be Bjorn's father, and that he had a
that's right. I forgot about that.
Dude, he was banging Lagatha the same time that Ragnar was, because that's the way Vikings were. They were kind of hippies too.
Oh,
you know,
totally.
they're just all about.
Not to get off track, but there was a point in the show that reminded me a lot of Mad Men, just as far as watching something and realizing the like historical context and how much things have changed. So in Mad Men, the scene was they were having a picnic in I think it was Central Park, and so it's the main character and his wife and kids, and they finish their picnic and they get up and they just throw their trash on the ground and walk away, because that's what people did in the 50s or 60s,
Right.
whenever it was, and you're watching that moment and you're like, holy shit. And then you're watching Vikings, and they bring Hathelstan from England, and he's their slave, and like I can't remember if they actually implicitly showed it, but they were implying anyway that there was like a three-way thing going on between them.
Wait a minute. Did Lagatha bang Athelstan?
If they didn't do it, there was talk of it. Like it was alluded to, and not just her, but Ragnar as well.
Right. They had a very deep
there was a real
polyamorous, very
yeah.
deep relationship between Ragnar and Athelstan, like truly. And I thought that was honestly, I loved their relationship, and I loved the way that they tied Floki in. That Floki was he was jealous and realized it was
straight up.
Yeah, like he killed what's his face because of his jealousy, I think.
I'm trying to remember.
Floki killed Athelstan while he was praying.
Yes, and it was total. I think it was total jealousy.
Yeah, because friggin' Athelstan becomes a Viking at one point. Like he kind of switches back and forth from being a Viking to not being a Viking a little bit, and that's the other thing too. Again, the show would do these things where they would just jump sides. So Ragnar is now into Christianity, and now he's not into Christianity. It just went back and forth, back and forth. The part of the show that always really truly just had my jaw agape, and it goes back to what we were talking about before, but we didn't speak about this particular aspect of it, is these moments of human sacrifice, of willing human sacrifice, terrifying to me. Terrifying.
Yeah, me too.
These people volunteered to die. I remember one time they're like getting ready for a battle. Remember this? This is the first time you see the sacrifice. They're like, wait, we need a human sacrifice. Who should do it? And like, for some reason, I think they didn't have any Christians to sacrifice. So one of the Vikings is just like, oh, I'll be it. Like as if he was paying for dinner. Right. Like it was so.
I got it.
What disturbed me was the nonchalant shrug, devil may care attitude of, yeah, I got that. Oh, I got it. No worries. As if he'll be back tomorrow to be like, okay, somebody else's turn. It's like, no, you're literally sacrificing your life to favor the gods because they're going on some little ragtag mission.
Right. Yeah. And it's like you said before. I mean, basically that, there was no consequence to death. It was just, a gateway to Valhalla.
Right.
Or do you go to Valhalla when you sacrifice yourself?
Of course, because you have to die bravely. It's about dying bravely.
It's about dying bravely. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be in battle. Okay.
This is why Bjorn is like, I cannot die. This guy who literally killed probably hundreds and hundreds of men, survived every battle imaginable. He's going to die an old man in his bed. Not an old man, but he's going to die in his bed. Painfully, but he's going to die in his bed, and he's like, "This is unacceptable. I have to die on the battlefield," and forces himself to go out. And again, you have Lagatha is dead. she's dead. And someone's like, somebody's got to escort her to Valhalla. Who wants to do it? Me. I was like, damn. But and then they're like getting ready for the ceremony, and it's like before you die, you get banged. Like they're sleeping with her, the girl who, I guess because she was a virgin or something, and they didn't want her to go to Valhalla a virgin, and then they just shove a dagger in her, and she dies, and that's it. That's the end of her. Even Torvi was pregnant and wanted to sacrifice herself for Lagertha. Yeah. Like, and Lagertha's like, or somebody else is like, no, Torvi, you're pregnant. You can't do it. It's like, what? I think she was pregnant with with Ragnar Jr. actually.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't recall.
So
that actress is, I'm 90% sure she's the wife of the creator, I believe.
Real Michael Hirsch?
I think. I could be wrong. She's in the credits, isn't she? Georgia Hurst.
Maybe. I don't. All those names, I never really pay attention to them.
I like. It's one of those things where I think I saw it like on a meme or a post, but I never researched it, so it could be totally wrong. Somebody's watching this like, these fuckers don't know shit about Vikings.
Well, again, this is what happens. Same thing with Breaking Bad. Same thing with Game of Thrones. When you realize that, wow, I actually started the show years ago, and you just don't remember certain details. There are whole swaths of this show that I completely forgot.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about going back and watching at least the first like 3 or 4 seasons again, because I remember all the broad strokes from 5 on, but there's a lot where I don't remember. And to be honest, I think the first time I watched the show, I zoned out a little, maybe halfway through season 1. So like around when Donald Loge was in it. So like I don't remember a lot of.
Oh yeah, Donald Loge. Yeah, he played. That's how Ragnar became the king.
Yeah.
And I remember saying at that point, I was like, "Oh, he's the king. You could just end it here. Like, where's the show going to go?
Right.
What else are you going to do? You know?" But so this was interesting. I had forgotten Torvi. Well, Torvi was Bjorn's wife, and then she marries Ubbe. And who was my favorite of Ragnar's sons after Bjorn? I love that guy. Just a great
I think he's the closest to Ragnar, just as far as physicality. Like I think he resembles Travis Fimmel, and he has a little bit of that. Like they both kind of do the, they're looking at you and they're swaying around.
Yeah, he does the sway thing a lot.
And I'm sure he's mimicking the other actor's performance, but I thought, and this was my whole take on the brothers right at first. I was like, I didn't think any of the actors were particularly bad or anything, but none of them stood out to me. They all felt like basically like red shirts for those like first 3 or 4 episodes of, say, season 5 when they were all on their own, or even I think they first came in season 4, whatever. But I was just like, just unimpressed. They just kind of felt like adequate. But I would say all of them like they got better. Like they grew into the roles to where, I think Ivar is one of the best performers on the show.
Phenomenal
from the get, and even, Bjorn got better.
So much better. He became multi-dimensional.
And I'm not saying they were bad before, but they definitely grew into the characters. Whereas like when you watch season 1, like Travis Fimmel, he's fucking Ragnar, right? Like right from the get, just like boom, like who the hell is that? Like how have I not seen this guy in other things? Like I was like, he was awesome, man. And I think not to keep praising Travis Fimmel, but I think he made the other actors better. Like they're like. Catherine Winnick, she's a fine actress. She was good all the way through the show.
She's amazing.
I don't think she was ever as good as she was opposite him.
I thought she was my other favorite character all the way through, and she's just so badass. And I loved that final arc they gave her. And
yeah, I did too. I really wish, like you see people and you wish, they would be in more stuff. Like she's one of them. Like I'd like to see. More, like the only other thing I can remember.
Put her in some sort of Marvel thing.
Like she was one of the bad guys in Polar with Mads Mikkelsen. And,
oh really?
It's a fucking low rent. Like yeah, a Netflix John Wick, and or a Wish John Wick, but
Yeah.
yeah, and she's in there, and it's a totally thankless role, and you're just like, oh, I want to see her do. I mean, I'm sure she will, but that wouldn't.
I have high hopes that she will find something that definitely like lends to her abilities as an actress because she's phenomenal, really, truly.
Yeah.
Um, so a couple of things as we wrap this up. One, first of all, a couple questions. Do
Hmm.
you think that Ivar really got the lookalike wife pregnant?
Oh, yes, I bought it in the context of the show. Yes.
Okay. Because I was like, how all of a sudden can he finally accomplish this thing that he could never accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's one of those things where, yeah, it's kind of a plottish hole, but you can't really back in those days, you can't, there was no way to quantify the science of it or what was wrong with him or why he could or
True.
couldn't perform. So I think I think the show played it as reality.
I just answered my own question. Ready? I'm about to answer that question. I just thought of it just as you were talking.
Okay.
When the part of the development of Ivar is that part of his inadequacy as a Viking and as a warrior because of his disability is his inadequacy with intimacy with a woman. And
Mhm.
we see that explored endlessly. And it sort of gnarls his character. And then he goes and he basically frees the Rooses, right? He
Mhm.
like he kind of does it. I guess he's kind of even though it's self-serving him for sure, he also nobly frees all these people, whether it's for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. He does right by these people. He helps overthrow, he frees the brother and the nephew who's the rightful heir. They're able to successfully overthrow the evil prince, yada yada yada, end of day. And so in doing that and sort of like shedding, his desire for power and to be a king in that kind of way, because they've already been defeated at that point. He basically earns the ability to lay a woman.
Mm.
That's what happens. That's why he's able to do it. So
Okay.
the first time it was faked because she lied to him. His first, and what's interesting is it's the same girl playing two different roles. So the
Yeah, that
first time it was deceptive, and then the second time it was genuine, and
right.
it was sort of mirroring, like his struggle and his character arc, and his ultimate accomplishment is that he does birth a son.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I could buy that.
Um, so that's one question I had. Number two, we forget that Bjorn had another child with the girl with the scar across her face, and she and the child fled before
Mhm.
he was married to Torvi,
That's right. That's right.
and
And that never
she's
came back
never,
around. Yeah.
yeah, she's never brought up again. But and then he has a liaison with someone else. I don't remember where, but he sleeps with some princess or some.
He was in like was it the Middle East he was in? Not the
Was
Middle
it the Middle East? Yeah.
Where he was somewhere. It was somewhere east. I don't, Middle East. Maybe I'm being racist there, but
No, no, no. No, that's what they do. They go that far after they blood eagle the
I mean,
king who
I just
killed
remember
Ragnar.
I remember it being in the desert and there were tents and people with turbans.
They were in the Mediterranean. They
Yeah.
they absolutely traveled to the Mediterranean, and that's when, remember when Floki is like so taken aback by the Muslims praying.
Yeah.
They're doing, and he's so enamored with their devotion and faith to their God. He's so touched by
Mhm.
another faith, and it's the first time that it happens for him. It
Yeah.
doesn't, because Floki doesn't like Christianity, but he's taken aback by this other faith. And then what's interesting is Floki loses everything.
Yeah.
Everything. His wife dies, his child dies. You know,
I had a rough go of it.
he had a rough go of it. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that interesting about the show that we have left unexplored? There. Oh, of course. Sorry. Last thing. This is the big thing I want to talk about.
Okay.
So they make it to Greenland. They have this fight over the whale,
Mm.
which what killed me about the last 5 or 6 episodes is that they literally took what could have been 2 seasons worth of show
Yeah.
and just jam packed it. And it was great stuff.
Yeah.
Like this whole fight, like I could have seen like a 5-episode arc about the whale. Like
Yeah.
the whale fascinated me.
Mm-hmm.
He's on my property. They have this fight. It like that was, and then that's where you leave Flatnose. I was like, that's perfect. I was like, that is phenomenal. And then they do this thing where they're like, oh, we're ending the show, but we're going to end it with something that literally could bring 1 billion seasons of the show. The moment they touch down in North America, and you see these beautiful vistas of North America that are just like, it's beautiful the way that they do this in the show, and the natives, the indigenous Native Americans that are there are this beautiful people, and they have this like little thing that happens where one of theirs kills one of the others, and they're going to blood eagle him, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
I was like, this is phenomenal, but this is not how you end a show. This is like give me a full season of this. Like, what are you doing to me? Like, why are you torturing me with this wonderful thread that I just want you to keep pulling at?
Yeah.
And then tying Floki into it, it just worked so well. I was so pleased with it, you know?
And when they got there and the indigenous people were like so like welcoming, like, you know, like, and it just, I man, that hit me pretty hard. And I usually don't with stuff like that, but I got a little misty watching that just because
it was beautiful, man.
Knowing history and what's about to happen, and it's like,
right.
Fuck.
Well, it's beautiful. Once again, it's like this idea of utopia where we're not going to do the things, and that's the other thing. It's the other theme of the show is we're going to travel to a new land to start anew, but the problem is we're bringing us to the new land.
Right.
The land is not the problem. We're the problem, and they discuss that very thing. The problem is never the place. We just come to the place, and because we're stuck in the old ways, we can never be what we want to be.
Yeah.
And
wherever you go, there you are.
Right. And so, you know, if this was Ubbe's big, I think Ubbe's big change, I don't even know if it's a change, but Ubbe's big test as a character. I love stories that give characters tests. A great example, Django Unchained. Django Unchained, which is a very flawed film for me, ultimately completely disintegrates when Jamie Foxx is given this big save the cat character test. And again, I say save the cat because that's like a screenplay writing thing. I don't want to denote any way or, you know, compare saving a cat to saving a human being. That is like so not what I mean when I say that. Just want to say that. But it's the trope of save the cat where the main character hero has this opportunity to do this thing and then doesn't do the thing. And yes, it's, I guess from a story writing perspective, it's like giving us something that we weren't suspecting, but it makes you hate it made me hate the character. And Ubbe is presented with the same sort of situation when they're in North America. One of his own Viking allies basically tells Ubbe what happened. Oh, they attacked me with a knife and I had to defend myself. And I think if it was any other Viking, if that was Ivar, if it was Hitzek, if it was King Finehair, they'd go, oh, that's the truth. Let's attack these people and just kill them all.
Yeah.
And Ubbe is like, I don't believe you. And we need to punish you. And the punishment needs to be severe because we're starting a new way of doing things. And then here they are, they're about to blood eagle the dude. And he just smells on him. He's like, you're not. And how could someone who murders another person and does that and like intimidates a child like that? Of course, he's not brave enough to get blood eagled.
Yeah.
And so they just execute him.
Yeah.
They don't do this religious ceremony that's supposed to bring your soul to Valhalla. They just slit his throat.
Yep.
And it's like capital punishment, which is like brutal by today's standards. But back then it's like, you murdered someone, so you have to die, which is like kind of like a very pragmatic, like positive thing to enforce not murdering people, I guess, you know, like, so again, not saying that I am for capital punishment. I'm just saying by Viking standards, that might be like a reasonable measure of, hey, we're not going to give you we're not going to pardon you to Valhalla. We're just going to kill you because, you know, you did this horrible thing.
Right.
And it left Ubbe and Floki are on the beach, and it says, is this the end? And he's not just saying, is this the end of the show, which it is. He's talking about, as you said, what did you say about the dying light?
Raging Against the Dying of the Light, the Dylan Thomas poem.
Yeah. That's what he's asking Floki right then and there. And Floki just goes, I don't know. He's like, Floki just doesn't know anything anymore. It's this beautiful, he just basically becomes this forget. And you know what's interesting? Floki becomes the thing that a young Floki would have been terrified of.
Mm-hmm.
An old man who's going to die in his bed. That's what Floki becomes.
Yeah.
And he rejects his Viking heritage in the process by doing that. And I'm very pleased. The new series is going to be coming out in a year. Vikings.
Is it a prequel? Takes place
No,
before, or is it something after?
It's 100 years later.
Oh, okay.
It's called Vikings Valhalla, and it's going to be on Netflix.
Okay, I'll definitely be following that.
Me as well. And I just really, truly, I really love the show. It was such a tonic for me when Game of Thrones was such a letdown. And although I have to tell you, I was a little forgiving of Game of Thrones after it shit the bed.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how time, like in 5 years from now, will I revisit Game of Thrones if I choose to? Will I be like accepting of the ending now that is what it is?
So,
you know,
like, here's my quick thing on Game of Thrones in the last season. So the very end, which is what most people seem to have the biggest problem with, I don't have a huge problem with how it
me either.
It was a little anticlimactic, but I thought I was okay with the broad strokes. My problem with the Game of Thrones,
Arya's ending is great.
Yeah. My major and actually when I first saw the finale, and I was drinking, and I was mad. I was like, like, this is fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
I of course erased all those posts.
Right.
Like an idiot. But I remember rewatching it like maybe a month or two later, like sober, and I still didn't love it, but I wasn't angry about it. I was like, okay, what angers me about Game of Thrones is just like overall,
right,
those last two seasons were so flawed, and it was so like off the rails. Like, I don't think there's and I've seen a few think pieces where people justify it. They like, no, it makes sense because of this and that. I think it's textbook. They were getting ready to do their Star Wars thing. They wanted to get done.
100%.
They were trying to hurry through
1,000,000,000%.
Or other people say that they just weren't that super talented in the first place. And
no, they were not.
And we're leaning really heavily on the source material.
They were falling with style.
And when the source material
dried up,
ceased to be, they kind of lost its way.
Which really,
I would say it's probably somewhere between those two things.
Which is really a testament to, if that is true, is really a testament to there's a huge difference between adapting and writing.
Oh yeah, totally.
Which is a very interesting, profound thing. In the same way too that, like, I'll give you a great example. Again, I gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
A great example. I watched Dawn of the Dead, the zombie cut, and which is the Dario Argento cut, the Italian version.
Yeah,
it's the shortest version. Mm-hmm. And then I watched the Cannes cut. And what's interesting is, if I was a film professor, this is what I would show in an editing class. I would be like, here's the same footage with two different mindsets attacking the material. One is clearly from a writer's perspective, which was George Romero, who wrote, directed, and edited the film. Mm-hmm. And one is from the producer perspective, who is literally taking the stuff that they did not create, which, again, that's not to denounce that, like, you shouldn't have an editor that's not the writer director. Like, of course, but I'm just saying, someone who is really, I feel like the zombie cut was done to service the Italian market more than it was to service the story.
Yeah.
And you see it so clearly in everything from the music cues being different to the way that they insert different pieces of dialogue, like there are alternate scenes that are on it, to just cutting out vast swaths of story that you need in order to understand what is going on.
Right.
And it's just it's I feel like that really is a very similar thing to the way that like they adapted this stuff for TV and then they run out of the stuff. They don't have the writers inflection in it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just sort of like trying to appeal to the audience in the way that they think that it's going to work for their market. And
yeah. And to be fair, this is the last thing I'll say about Game of Thrones, but to be fair to those guys, there's never been a production like that, like, in the history
so true
of film. Like they were
very true
shooting a season and whatever, 8-episode season, and there's scenes from all 8 episodes being shot in different countries at the same time. They're shooting pieces in the finale. And so, it's a whole, whole big mechanism, and it's really easy to get chewed up by that. And not to excuse it, I still think the last 2 seasons were not great, and I probably will never revisit them, but I don't hate the guys. I'll go check out their next thing.
Could you imagine if they had the same budget and resources for Star Wars and they did a Star Wars show? I know you're going to say, oh, well, The Mandalorian, but I think The Mandalorian is made for way less money than Game of Thrones is.
I don't know what the budgets are, but I would assume, but I would be assuming.
I mean, could you imagine if they had that kind of resources to tell a Star Wars story of just like of Game of Thrones, like epic size? It would just be insane. It would be so great.
I'll be curious to see what Amazon does with their Lord of the Rings. Is that, from what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I am very excited. Well, listen, what I'd like to do in the future, there's no time now, but I'll hit you up. Well, let's talk about Raised by Wolves.
Okay.
That'll be the next thing we talk about. And I want to thank you so much, Jason, for coming on the show. That nobody watched live, but that's okay because it's just, again, it's there for streaming.
Right.
And this was really fun. And if you haven't seen Vikings and you got spoiled by the show, you should go watch Vikings. It's great.
Right. You have to put that on the thumbnail.
Yes. Thank you so much. Peace and hair grease. We are